And we just gotta, we're just gonna hang out here, Sue, deer in the headlight, until we are live, which I do show. YouTube does show that we are live right now, and the signal's coming through. So, congratulations and welcome to vLiveCast's first live show. This is going to be a weekly show, which I don't know if you can tell, but it's going to be, oh, it's above Sue's head. It is weekly, Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time. And our motto here at vLiveCast is that Zoom is for meetings and meetings are
Meetings are
boring.
boring.
And so, what we want to talk about in this show in general, it's going to be some tech tips, it's going to be some marketing tips all around going live. We're going to be talking about pretty much anything and everything. It could be lighting, it could be audio. Sue, you have a tremendous background in marketing if you want to talk about that and what you plan on bringing to the platform.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of marketing consulting and marketing for different types of businesses. I have experience in producing shows, doing video, live shows, events. So, a lot of that, the planning behind the scenes and all of the pre-work is pretty much, it takes the most time. It takes so much time to do all the planning, not only from the technical side, which, as you know, you're my technical guy.
Right.
Uh,
And while you're doing this, I'm setting up plugins because
yes.
what people don't know is that I had this all configured. And then when I went to go open it like 15 minutes ago, none of the assets were there. So I had to stitch this whole show together in the last
Well,
15 minutes. So I'm
that
going
is
to,
the beauty of going live, right?
yes.
You just never know what's going to happen. So you got to have backup. We're kind of working on a few backup things right now. So you just go with what you got.
Yeah, and so part of that is, as an example, I'm doing audio right now because I'm not coming through as loud as I should be. So I'm just kind of tweaking the audio a little bit and doing some other things to clear out the background. And then as Sue begins talking again, I'll go ahead and start doing hers also, just so we have a nice, not only good looking show, but also a very clean show. So what else? I know, oh, we're going to talk about ourselves. So you talked a little bit about yourself and your background. And I think it's kind of interesting. I also want to hear more about how we decided to work together because of
Yeah.
the pandemic. If you look at the website, vlivecast.com, founded pandemic or COVID 2020 is I think what we put in there. So we like to have fun. I have a background in video marketing specifically. So for the last 11 years, I've been really focused on video marketing, YouTube, how do you use video as an asset? So when the pandemic and COVID hit, and if I think if we say COVID enough times, we'll get flagged by YouTube, and they don't want to promote this because there are some topics that are taboo that YouTube and different.
We're not going into that at
Yeah,
all.
we're not going to go into that. But the reality is, this is a great way to reach a broader audience. And so for me, and I forget, well, you brought it up because you were talking about nonprofits. That's kind of where the
So
conversation started.
part of the other part of my background is I do radio. I'm a local radio personality in Sonoma County, California, here in Santa Rosa. And so I've been doing that for almost 15 years. And in that position, I get to go to a lot of nonprofit events. I MC a lot of them. I am part of them. I donate, I participate, I volunteer. And seeing all of these nonprofits like have every single one of their events just go away and be canceled and not have an opportunity to raise the money that they had been planning on. They planned to spend all this money on these big live events where people could come and have hundreds of people and do these things, and then they were gone. And so it was heartbreaking to me. And so you and I started chatting about, wow, what are these people going to do? What are the options that they have? And as people were starting to get on the Zoom calls, one after the other after the other, and we're still doing right. We're still doing Zoom calls over and
Right.
over again. But yeah, it was kind of like, well, how can we take that and do something really fun? And because we're here, we're gonna be in this situation for a little while. It's going to be a while before we can have those big events. So yeah, and then I'm talking to you because you're the video guy. You're the
Right.
techie.
Well,
And
I remember you going, kind of asking and going, it'd be really neat if we could take, because, and I was doing some things while you were talking, so I wasn't 100% paying attention, but I don't know if you brought up the fact that most nonprofits don't necessarily, um, they're not out collecting money on a regular basis. They have
right,
galas, right? They have these
yes,
big galas. People weren't able to go, so kind of everything dried up. And you're like, oh, it'd be really cool if we could do like the old webinar, or not the old webinar, telethons.
telethons,
Yeah, and
yes,
and
yeah,
so it kind of started with the telethon, and oh, if you could just do it online live, and I'm like, well, you can. It's called video, and
yes,
so that really it got me going because I think we were just talking. It wasn't like, oh, we should start a business, and what are we going to do? It was just, wow, Sue's kind of sad a little bit because she knew the impact it was having, and brought up the telethon, and then it came to video, and I'm like, well, you could do that. And then we just had to figure out how to do it. I knew technically it could be done. I didn't
right,
necessarily know how it could be done, and so that's where we started. I started investigating and looking into software, and obviously Zoom was one of those choices. And in the past, I had used a company called vLive. Probably 2 or 3 years ago, I started playing with the whole live stream thing, started using vLive. So I knew there were opportunities out there, but a lot of the initial big brands, if you will, in the live streaming had a lot of restrictions. There just wasn't a lot that you could do. And we knew that we didn't want to do a Zoom event, but we need to have a way of having multiple people on board. And so that's where I found vMix. And the more I
yeah.
looked into vMix, the more I got excited.
Well, there's so many, and that was the beauty of it. There's so many possibilities, and that's what I love about it. Is because taking going from a really large gala, a live event that is
Hmm.
huge, and these nonprofits and organizations are spending so much time and money on these amazing events that are just beautiful, down to every detail, the decorations, the lighting, the audio, the everything, the experience for the people coming to these big live gala events. And how do you now take that and go virtual, do it live streaming, and still make it fun and
Right.
entertaining and something
And
that people
engaging, I
want?
think, also.
Yes,
Right.
engaging. And so some interaction. And how do you get people to come and support the cause, because they want to support the cause, but
Right.
a lot of times they want to have an experience, because that was how great those big events were, and have this experience, see the people, and do
Right.
all of that.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
and that's where kind of like the whole Zoom thing. Zoom is great for meetings, and it doesn't work well for broadcast. It doesn't work well for live events if you're actually wanting to do different things. Like I'm switching between just me and just Sue. If we wanted to bring in a PowerPoint presentation, I don't have to go and go, okay, where's the share screen button at, and click something. When you have somebody who's actually producing the show, which today I'm the show producer because I'm behind all the widgets and gizmos on vMix, I'm able to set up what we call assets. And so my video is an asset, Sue's video is an asset, the background image that you're looking at and the text are assets, but we can bring in all other types of things. And we'll talk about that more. I don't think we need to go get into the details. So that's how we got to where we're at. We've produced a number of events so far, and we've worked with some really great people. And we're looking to now take that knowledge, that experience that we've gained over the last 4 years of doing this, and going, okay, what information can we share to the population in general?
yes,
So for this, I think the audience is going to be people who are interested in live streaming. And we're not going to cover the basics. Like I think everybody knows you can grab a phone these days and do live streaming. To me, that's like the very simple rudimentary. It is great for a lot of different occasions. What we're going to be talking about is going to be a little bit more of the complex types of setups and what you can do so that you can add a professional look and feel, so that you can make your event or whatever it is as professional and exciting for the audience as possible, so that it's not just another Zoom call.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of it's the creativity piece where, like I said, when you have those live events and people are coming up with these amazing ideas of how to have these great experiences. So that's the part that I really like, is working with you, coming up with, and of course our clients, and based on their goals and what they really want to see as an end result of the event. But coming up with those ideas, okay, what's possible? And there's been plenty of times where we said, hey, could we do this? And you kind of go, I think we can. Let me look into it. I think I can figure out how to do this. And so that's what I love about this. It's almost like there's unlimited possibilities for this, a virtual streaming setting. And it's kind of like, oh, can we do that? Yeah, let's figure out how we can do it, and how do we make it better?
Yeah, and part of how can we do it, part of what we're going to be using this live stream for is going to be testing stuff. So there are going to be times that we're going to kind of like, hey, everybody, we have an idea, we have a thought, we're going to test it. It may blow up in our face, and it may be successful. So we want to bring as much learning as possible. And I think part of learning is also not just somebody telling you what to do, but being able to actually watch behind the scenes and kind of see us struggle. Like, you should have seen me 20 minutes ago. I'm like, I have no assets. I had to build out the entire show. So there were some things that we wanted to do that just simply aren't here. And that's part of doing live.
Yeah. And my camera, we've been talking about my home setup here. It's like, I got the crappy camera. It's like, we still haven't fixed that from the home setup. It's
but
not
you got
like
this beautiful purple glow behind you.
Isn't that pretty? This is my lighting.
So pretty.
And it matches.
I have a little bit here. I have a little bit too much light in the studio today to be able to see that. And for people that are wondering, this is not a green screen. This is actually, that's Highway 101 that rolls right through the middle of town in Sonoma County. So I've had people go, how'd you do that green screen? That's really cool. It's not a green screen. It's live, just like the show is live.
Totally. You can see all my wine glasses in the back. Yeah. That's accurate.
Hey, I'm impressed that there's that many clean ones in there.
I know, and there's no wine in any of them.
Yeah. So let's see. So did we cover kind of what the show's going to be about? I mean, I think to be honest with you, we're still trying to figure it out. As far as we have an idea of what we want to do, but I think it's fair to say we don't have like a definite game plan. This is how it's going to happen.
We have ideas, and I think there's a lot of value to the information we're going to be sharing. Like you said, kind of the here's what we learned about this, and we figured out this doesn't work, but this does. So those kind of things. And I love having the platform here to just test some stuff out, and if it doesn't work, well,
it'll happen. So let's dive into one of the topics that we were going to talk about is what we've learned from live streaming. And I'm curious to find out what you've learned, because on the technical end, I've learned a lot of things. And then you get to see well, it's been interesting, because how many times have I said, I've tested this? And then it's like, just like today's show, it was all set. I swear to God, it was all set.
Okay, what I have learned though is you have said that so many times, and I go, really? Like this was really working the last time you. And what I love about working with you is you just put your head down, you figure it out, and we move forward, and it always works. So that makes me really happy to know. I'm like, you're my tech guy. I'm like, Ryan can figure it out. It's fine. I'm just going to sit here and not talk to him, because
sometimes I'm banging tables and I'm like, I guess I could pull my hair out. I don't like to pull on my hair because I got my gel in there, so I can't really pull on my hair.
That has been actually, it becomes comical at some point where you're like, oh, okay, yeah. Like you came on today and you're like, and that didn't happen.
And I've showed you. I think the best one was the one that we did for Active 2030, where we literally went to the event location the day before, because the first rule that I've learned with doing live productions is rule number one, you test, rule number two, you test, and then rule number three, you test. And that's it. Those are the only three rules that you need to know. And I guess rule number four does defer back to rule number one. But we did an event, and we're talking multiple computers. We had a PA system. There was lighting. We had Zoom integration. It was it's not like running the NFL game or a hockey league game or something like that, but there was a lot of moving parts. And so we wanted to make sure that everything was working. So we got the people that were putting on the event, they had like 4 or 5 people come over the day of. Sue and I are there. We're lugging in all this equipment. We get everything set up. Everything tests out perfect. We're happy. We left the equipment at the location. We're like, we're not breaking this all down. Leave it there. We'll come back the following day. We set up, and what was it, like 10 minutes before the show, 15 minutes? And this was not a show, by the way. This was a live broadcast for a convention. So it was like it had to go because they didn't have a fallback.
With people from all over the world on
Yeah.
the Zoom call, it was integrated into the show.
Yeah. And for some reason, the very computer I'm on right now worked fine when we set it up, but the day after, like within 5 minutes of starting it up and getting everything going, the screen went blank. Computer was still on, but the screen went blank. And it was like, okay, what happened? And we ended up rebooting to, again, it goes blank. Fortunately, we were smart enough, and normally it's not something I would have done because everything worked. We brought a backup computer, and that saved the day. However, that computer wasn't all set up. So I think one of the things is always do a pre-test well before, because I literally had 15 minutes before we were supposed to go live, and I'm pulling cords out of one computer, putting a new computer in, and then we had the resync, all the assets. And I think we ended up going 5 or 10 minutes late.
Yeah, it was a little stressful, but that's another
stressful.
I mean, that was a great learning experience too, to say. And then when we went to the last event that we just did, I was like, we said, oh, should we bring this? Yes, just bring it. Just
Right.
Bring everything, because if we end up needing it, and you ended up needing that backup, that little monitor, didn't you?
Yeah.
So it's like, everything seems to be running fine, and you never know with technology. So have the backup.
Yeah. And today I was producing a live show, and I like to reset everything after a while, just computers, the internet. And this is something I do on a regular basis. I'm like, you know what? It's been probably a couple of months since I restarted the router, the main router that the internet comes into for the office building. And like a half hour before the show, I'm like, oh, I'm going to reboot that router, which I did. No internet. I could connect to it, but I had no internet for some reason. And so I'm like, well, that's really strange. So then I took everything down, all the routers, all the switches that I had in place. I ended up switching. I swapped out cables. I rebooted it. And it finally, after rebooting that thing a couple of times, and then I'm on the phone with Comcast because I'm like, hey, I need to you need to fix this, because I had 5 minutes before guests were supposed to come on board. And sure enough, at that point, I swapped out a different cable and everything worked. So I think the router just took a little bit, or the main router ended up taking a little bit longer to fully connect than usual, because I'm back on all my regular cables and everything. So you just never know.
You just never know. And like I said, having the the cool head, we'll hand you a Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
And then leave you alone, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah. And typically it always does work out if you allow the mindset that things are going to work out in the best ways possible. It does work out. So I'm trying to think what else. Well, what about from like a marketing point of view or educating people? What have you found that you've had to maybe reemphasize or let people know?
I think that people forget they need to promote their event. I mean, honestly, it's just like having another big event that you are going to sell tickets to. It's the same thing. Yeah, I mean, okay, it's a free show. Okay, yeah, I put it on Facebook. Well, you really have to, and sometimes spend a little bit of money on some advertising that you normally would have done for that big event. You're asking people to donate money, and asking them to be on another call or another live event.
Hmm.
Even though the other thing that I always say too is kind of like, well, what are you giving your audience? What's the experience? And that's why I love what we're doing, is
Right.
something a little bit more creative. So giving them something, giving that reason to be there, and letting people know, hey, it's not going to be a Zoom call. It's
Right.
actually going to be something really cool, and that comes across in their messaging, which I'm happy to help our clients with. If they're willing to take some suggestions and say, okay, well, we're going to do more than just put it on Facebook,
Hmm.
and see what
Right. And I think,
happens.
from that, one of the things that I've learned and this is a terminology that you use that I've never heard of, but totally makes sense, is run of the show.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
actually know what all the different, and the technical side, it's very helpful because there's the actual details of
yes.
what assets do you need, because just like a TV program, if you were to watch Three's Company from the day, there's an actual script, and not that everything needs to be scripted, but you need to know what the individual chunks are so
Yes.
that not only do you have the assets, but transitions. And how can you
Yes.
make a clean transition from one segue to the other?
Exactly, and that's one of the things I actually enjoy doing, is working on the run of the show, and how to figure those pieces out. Working with our clients based on, okay, they want to have this entertainer, or they want to have this speaker, or this. A lot of times we incorporate that recorded video for a nice testimonial of one of their clients that isn't can't be live,
Hmm.
and being able to figure out how do all those pieces and parts fit together to make a show.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's like, I think a lot of times people forget, it's just like producing a live in-person event.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you got to maintain the momentum
Yes.
throughout the show. Because if you
Yes.
want people to stay engaged, especially if you're doing a webathon, as an example, where you're asking people to keep donations or to bid on an auction item that is up for sale, or up for auction, I guess, not for sale, is how do you keep things engaging? How do you bring the excitement? How do you entice people and ensure that there's a constant flow of storytelling? I think is so important from what I've seen so far, and then also entertainment and making it
Yes.
entertaining.
Well, and as many people know, especially the nonprofits producing those in-person events, is you know do the heartstrings. Where are the heartstrings? People
Yeah.
people want something to connect with and be a part of. So if people are able to really get in and do those heartstrings with all of the players that are in the show, you're going to be way more successful,
All
like you
right.
said, with the storytelling and all of that.
Yeah. And when you say heartstrings, what is that for you specifically? What is something that you would like to see or hear that is going to pull on those heartstrings?
Well, I think the majority of a lot of the nonprofits are helping people
Hmm.
or animals or something like that, and those are things that are very personal to us. So if we're working with council on aging, you're talking about seniors. Okay, my grandmother, my grandfather, my parents. When you hear these stories and you go, oh my gosh, they are doing so much good, and I want to help, because that could affect me and the people that I love. And
Hmm.
same thing with the pets. I mean, come on, you see these stories, I mean, you've seen the videos on TV with Sarah McLachlan and she's singing and you're seeing these poor pets and it's like, how do you say no to that? You know? Like, oh, the
Yeah,
babies.
the
So
babies.
it's making that, that real, a personal human connection, and evoking that emotion to say, wow, that it does affect me, even though it's
Hmm.
not me, it does affect me. And I want to be someone that helps make a
Right.
difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the other things that we've definitely learned is the pre-show. So a lot of times, and we've done events as short as a half hour for where we literally packed up all the gear, showed up at a location, and because of the fires, we actually had a location set, and then we ended up having to move it to another location just like a day or two before the actual live event, which I think
Exactly.
worked out great. Um, and I have no idea where I was going with this, but it was something important. Oh, it's the pre-show, and
Okay.
even if it's just a half-hour show, who are the people that are involved, and getting them to actually see and experience what's going to happen, so that when they walk in, they're not having to do it cold. And I'm sure everybody's been on a Zoom meeting somewhere where who's ever managing all the clicks and who's visible, who's not visible, and all of that. You've seen people learn on the fly,
Oh yeah.
and it doesn't make anybody look good. So setting up time and actually practicing and making sure internet. Oh, let's talk about internet connection
Oh, let's talk about internet.
because you're probably on wireless, I'm guessing.
I am right now. I'm not
Yeah,
hardwired.
yeah.
Sorry.
But so that's so show producer wise, that's one of my pet peeves. I'm actually gonna the software that I have, I can actually take a look and see what's going on. Fortunately, you're coming in right now. You're coming in solid, so you actually have a very clean signal. But I think a lot of
I have
times,
good
especially
internet and I got no kids here playing video games, so I'm good.
yeah, and so a couple of things, especially if you want good quality, because we've all seen it doesn't matter which platform you're on, if you're on Zoom, if you're on Teams, if you're on Skype, if you have poor internet, pixelation, the voice starts, things get choppy. And so I'm always hardwired here. And then when we do events, it's one of the first requirements before we sign any documents, we let people know we need hardwire access to the internet because that's the most stable connection that you're going to see. And I know one of the things that I've learned doing a lot of live shows where I actually produce shows for other people, clients, and so they're bringing guests on every week. They've got new guests, and I always send out we always email them out. Here's a link to the show. Here's all the requirements that we ask that you do from a hardware, software, internet. And one of them is hardwire. And I've had to cancel a couple of shows because the internet connection was so poor that it just from a quality point of view, it did not make sense. And I know one of those shows we rebooked and the person was hardwired, went
Yep.
flawlessly. And I've done shows. I think the farthest one, because we're in the North Bay in California, so Northern California, the farthest away I've had a guest is Australia. And with a
Wow,
good connection, a good camera, he looked as sharp as you and I.
that's awesome.
So it's really cool what we could do, but there are some rules that you need to follow, and we're going to be talking about that. So we're going to be talking about the fancy lights that Sue's using. We're going to be talking about microphones. Hopefully, you have your little snow mic.
I actually forgot.
It's all good. It is the first show.
Right?
And the reality, I did a show for a client that was actually live, his weekly live show. And I don't know why I got flustered. Something happened beforehand. I hit the record button, which is recording on the computer, but I didn't hit the actual stream
Oh
button.
no.
And so we have a 1 minute buffer. So it has a little countdown. So that's something we got to add to our show. It has a little 1 minute countdown. Right when it hit zero, I was like, did I hit
Oh.
click the stream button? I was like, oh shit. So it like cut out the first 2 seconds of the intro. But these are the things. So, the other thing I'm going to say lastly, because I think we're coming up on 30 minutes here. the last thing I'm going to say is just practice, 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 test, test, test. Just go and do it. Um, that's what we're doing today with this show.
Yes, it was
And
fun.
yeah, and we will learn what we don't like from the show, and we are
Yes,
going to learn what we do like, and that's how the voice of the show comes to be. You
sure.
start figuring that out. But I think the best analogy I use with people, because again, I've done a lot of work with video with clients over the years, is if you've ever watched, gosh, it used to be you could name anybody. I can't use Ellen anymore as a reference. I can't use Bill Cosby as a reference, but I'm going to use Ellen because she likes to have people, actors that like super famous, and then she always likes to embarrass them by bringing on an old clip, like the very first commercial they were in. And they're like, oh my gosh, I was so terrible back then. I didn't know what I was doing. But that's where you have to start, right? You got to
Yes,
be willing to start and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I actually created that a year ago. And then I would say flip it and go, wow, look where we've come. Look how
yes,
great
exactly.
we're doing with
Yeah.
all the experience and practice that we've had.
I can't wait to see this show in a year. So
Yeah,
excited.
it's going to be fun because we'll have guests on. We're going to have
Yeah.
like balloons that blow up automatically and
Yes.
what are those
Confetti.
confetti
Confetti.
cannons going off?
At your office, not at my house.
Well, you got hardwood floors.
I still have confetti from New Year's last year.
Yeah, we'll just recycle it.
Nice.
So, all right. Any closing words for the show? Words of advice?
I don't know. I would just say if you have any interest in doing, live streaming virtual events, call us.
Yeah, or leave a
We'll
comment below. We're more than happy to engage with people in whatever way and ask questions, or yeah, do ask questions, and
yes,
we will respond because that's what we're here for. We want to be a source of information and help to the live streaming community.
there you go.
There we go. All right. With that, I'm going to bid you adieu. And as the thing says above your name over yonder, this is a weekly show every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So we would love to see you next week. We will be in doing this on Facebook. Today we're only doing YouTube because we're testing. We're gonna gradually keep on adding on and doing things, and we're gonna have some fun.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Yep, definitely. All right, Sue, wave goodbye to everybody.
Bye.